when it comes to the idea of a runaway convention, Ilyas Shapiro from Cato has written about this. Professor Barnett has commented on it, and I wanted to make sure that we get his thoughts in before I move to Q&A.
Thanks, Karen. A number of things. First of all, to reiterate what Representative Workman just said, the number one safeguard against a runaway convention is that all a convention of the states can do is propose amendments. It's the only power they have is to propose amendments. It's the same power Congress has today. Congress is a runaway convention now. But they're just not proposing amendments to limit their own power. So that's the only power a convention has. The only way any of these proposals become law is if 3/4 of the states then ratify them. So this is a convention for proposing amendments. That's the first thing I would say. That's the number one safeguard the founders put in the text itself. Secondly, nobody should ever refer to this as a constitutional convention. This was actually a term that was come up with by people who opposed an Article 5 movement in the past. It's not what the Constitution authorizes. It does not authorize a constitutional convention. It authorizes a convention for proposing amendments. That's what it authorizes. That's what the text says. Only amendments. A convention for proposing amendments. If you want to call it something, a shorthand, call it an amendments convention. But it is not a constitutional convention. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that it's a myth to say that the Philadelphia Convention that gave us our Constitution was itself a runaway convention. It was not. For at least two different reasons. One is because the mandate that each one of those state representatives had was a broad mandate to address the serious problems that were in the country at that time, and that would have included a radical change of the kind they ultimately proposed. But the other thing that was different with what came out of the Philadelphia Convention, which was a constitutional convention, turned into one, and that is that really, it required a unanimous vote of everyone. No state was bound by the new convention unless they agreed to be bound by the new. No state was bound by the proposed Constitution unless they agreed to. Now, it's true the Constitution went into effect when 3/4 of the states agreed to do it, but the remaining quarter were not in. In fact, 2 states remain out. North Carolina and Rhode Island stayed out of the Constitution for a couple years until they finally voted in. So it really was completely a different animal whatsoever than an amendments convention that's authorized according to the text of the Constitution. And then of course there is the fact that it is a convention of the states. And a convention of the states is a creature of the states, to be administered and run by the states. And that has been our constitutional history. We have a history of conventions that pre-existed the Constitution. That's why it was put in here. And we've had regional conventions since then. And these are conventions that make their own rules. The state legislatures themselves make the rules. And that's what would happen here. Unfortunately, with what's the name of the organization? What is it?
Assembly of State Legislators.
The Assembly of State Legislators are working to ensure agreement amongst states as to what the rules would be.